Hey guys, it's John here from Sonic Drive Studio. I hope you're all doing great. Remember that blind test video from earlier this week in which we compared the PV6505 to the Fractal Audio Axe-Fx III and the Line 6 Helix? If you haven't seen that video yet, do check that one out first. Otherwise you will be missing out on all the guessing game fun. I'll put a link up here and down here as well. In this video, I'm going to reveal the results and also talk about the settings on the amplifier and the modelers, etc. It should be very interesting and a lot of fun. Now, I'm not going to lie, the results were very surprising to me. When I was making the initial blind test video, I felt like I had a pretty clear image in my head of the differences between the amplifier and the modeling platforms. And I still think I do, to be honest, but that's probably partially also because of my bias. I am the one who created this test after all. I will talk about the sonic differences between the amplifier and the modeling platforms later in this video after I reveal the results. Anyway, your guesses were all over the place, so let's start by taking a look at what you guys guessed. Note that I'm recording this video the day after the release of the initial blind test video. I can't record this video later because I'm leaving town for a couple of days. However, this video as of now has over 3,600 views, so this should give a good idea of your general opinions. We have over 250 comments in the comment section down below as of right now, so that's probably around 220 overall guesses so far. Not everybody who commented made an actual guess, and at least 3,350 of you did not even comment or guess at all. For some reason. Why though? Was it the fear of being wrong, perhaps? Unfortunately, there's basically no way of knowing. So I will only be counting the guesses in the comments section down below for consistency, and I'm leaving out the partial guesses as well, so I'm only going to count the guesses that included A, B, and C. Alright, you guys ready? Here we go! So the most guesses went to A, amp, B, Helix, and C, Axe-Fx with 45 guesses. The least guesses went to A, Helix, B, the Axe-Fx, and C, amp. The others fall somewhere in between, as you can see, with in between 20 and 30 guesses each. So 65 of you thought that A was the real amp, 56 of you thought that B was the real amp, and 34 of you thought that C was the real amplifier. So I guess now it's time for the big reveal that you've all been waiting for. Are you guys ready? Are you sure? We can also do this some other time if you like. We don't have to do this right now if it's a problem. Oh, all right then, let's go ahead and do this. Are you guys up for this? Are you guys ready? Hold on to your seats because here we go. Enjoy. So, A was the Line 6 Helix's peavey Panama amp model, B was the Axe-Fx III's PVH6160 block amp model, and C was the real PV6505 tube amplifier. That's right, C was the real amplifier, A was the Helix, and B was the Axe-Fx. And that means that the real combination got the least guesses of all. Now, I was not expecting that, to be honest. As I said, when I was making the video, I had a pretty good idea of the sonic sort of texture that the Helix had, and the sonic texture that the Axe-Fx had, and the sonic traits that the real amplifier had as well. Interesting. I mean, it obviously goes without saying that the platforms and the amplifiers all sounded very close this time around, especially in the full mix. Maybe in the isolated sections you could hear the differences a little bit better, but yeah, they sounded very close indeed. So if you guessed the wrong combination, you should not feel ashamed at all. So kudos to Line 6 and Fractal Audio for making such accurate virtual amp models of this wonderful amplifier. So let's take a look at the settings that I used for each platform and the amplifier. Now let me try and explain what I think gives them all away. Let's start with the real amplifier. As I said in the first video, the amplifier was fed into my Fractal Audio LB2 reactive load and then into the York Audio DV77IR. And of course, I used that exact same IR for the modeling platforms as well. And these are the settings that I used with the amplifier. Those are settings that I like to use with this amplifier often. Low and high are at 6, mids are at 5, pre-gain at around 4, post-gain at 2, and resonance and presence fairly high, so at 8-ish. I really dig how those settings sound for my taste. The real amp has a very solid mid-range that stands proudly in a mix. It has a very clear yet non-harsh top end, and a very big and solid low end, especially down low. And to me, the low end is sort of what gives the amplifier away in the blind test comparison. If you listen very closely to the isolated segments, you can hear that the real amp always has a very solid sub-low end going on, also underneath the open notes and open chords. So not just when I'm palm muting those heavy chords. And with the modeling platforms, those open notes and open chords sound slightly more thin because of that. So the amplifier always has that sort of warm level of low end going on under all the notes, whether I'm playing muted or open notes. When you play the chunky palm mutes with the modeling platforms, that low end is all there, but not so much with the open notes and the single notes. So I guess that this also is how the amp feels a little bit different than the modeling platforms in this regard. The real amp also has this very natural and musical compression or sag going on that keeps everything together very nicely. So it kind of keeps everything very even sounding without anything poking out in an unnatural way. But I think, especially like I said, that low end thing sort of gives it away. Now, if you want to know what I'm talking about, grab your headphones or some good monitors. Listen to the isolated segments, especially the segments with single notes and unmuted notes. And just listen for that warm low end that's going on in the real amplifier. And do let me know in the comments down below if you're hearing what I'm talking about, because maybe it's very subtle to you. Let's now check out the settings that I used in the Line 6 Helix Native plugin. Just to echo what I said in the first video, you can get all of these tones with your Helix hardware, your HX Stomp, and your Pod Go as well. So of course I used the peavey Panama amp because that was based on a peavey 5150 block ladder amplifier. I had to use quite extreme settings here and there to get the sound more close to the real thing. As you can see, the mids are up quite high, presence is at 0, master at 2.2, sag at 1, ripple at 3.5, although that one was quite subtle, bias at 0.3, and resonance at 8. By default, the amplifier was a little bit brighter sounding and a little bit more squishy in the initial attack or transients of the notes. But by using these settings, I think that I got the amp model to sound very close to the real thing. I still think that the Helix sounds slightly more squishy in the transients or the attack, as I just said, but of course it still sounds very close. I mean, a lot of you guessed it wrong anyway, so yeah, that's proof. And I guess that a lot of you really liked the sound of this amp model as well, as a lot of you thought that this was the actual amplifier, so I guess it does sound very much like a tube amplifier. Now let's take a look at the settings that I used for the Axe-Fx III. Of course, I used the PVH6160 block amp model, which is based on a PV5150 block ladder as well. Nothing too crazy in terms of settings. More mids than on the real amp and less presence, basically. I used the Loadbox LB2 UK impedance curve, as that matches the impedance curve on the load box that I used on the actual amplifier. I turned the speaker compression off, as it made it sound a little bit more squishy than the actual amplifier. Now the Axe-Fx also sounded very close, obviously, but perhaps it was slightly more pokey in the upper mids, although this is a very subtle difference, of course. And that sort of thinness in the single notes or the open chords or open notes is sort of what gives the Axe-Fx away, in my opinion anyway. And perhaps also that sort of over-pronounced cut or bite. But yeah, obviously very close sounding indeed. Impressive. No post-processing was used at all to make them sound more close or something like that. It's always just a matter of taking the time and tweaking the amp models to make sure that they sound as close as possible. And sometimes that means that I have to deviate quite far from the default settings. So what did you guess? Were you in the ballpark or were you completely wrong? And what are your thoughts after hearing the results? What do you think? Of course, I'd love to know, so be sure to drop a comment down below in the comment section. Also, which amplifier should I do next in a similar sort of video? Let me know. I thought this was a lot of fun and the results were very interesting to me indeed. That's all for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please drop a like and a subscribe, as that would really help the channel out. I'd hugely appreciate that. And you can also follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you very, very soon. Cheers!